Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be making our pumpkin patch pumpkins, and we're going to start with an oil pastel and watercolor resist background. Of course, the first thing we always need to do is put our name on the paper first thing. So we're going to do that in the corner, and then I'm going to turn it over to the blank side on this side. So when we think about pumpkin patches, they have a couple of different things. They have big giant leaves and they have lots of vines. And if our pumpkin is going to be nice and ripe this time of year, there probably won't be any flowers on those. We've been talking a little bit about light and reflection and shadows and the dark side of things. So the first thing I want to start with are some of my big leaves. And the easiest way for us to draw a big leaf would be to trace our hands. So if you spread out your hand on there and you make a big leaf, it'll take up all of this space. And if we want to be careful that we're thinking about our lights and our darks, if we put our sunshine over here in this corner and it's shining this direction, what part of my leaf is going to have the yellow part or the sunlight on it? It's going to be the top sides of each of these pieces of my leaf. So I'm going to take my yellow oil pastel and I'm going to start tracing my hand, but I'm going to stop when I get to there because I just want to trace the sunny part first. Remember, if our sun's shining this way, then I just want to trace the sunny parts like this. And then on the back side, I'm going to have the darker part of the leaf. So on the back side where the shadows are at, I'm going to trace it with my dark green color, like this. That's where my shadows are at, right? Then if I move my hand, I kind of have a handprint in there, but if I want to turn it into a leaf, I can take my lighter green color, I can put the bottom on, and then I can draw the veins that might show up in a leaf. And those veins carry the water to the leaves, and they help with the chlorophyll and make the nutrients that also go back down into the plant. And it might have some vines where the pumpkins have grown or the flowers were at. So you can do some spiral shapes for those vines. We're going to be putting our pumpkin on top of here. So you want to make these nice and big. If some of your lines don't quite connect, you can always go back in and connect them. And then if you even want to make your vines have a sunny side, so remember our sun's coming this way, you could do a couple of the vines with a little bit of the yellow just on the side that's facing the sunshine, right? And on the back side of those vines, you might add just a little bit of the shadow. Not too much. We don't want to make our paper too dark. You could also add a little bit more of the veins up here with the other color, or sorry, with the darker shade of green. So now we have a big leaf and we have a bunch of vines. If you want to do a couple of tinier leaves that come off of there, just real quick ones like this, remember light side and dark side like that. You might even have a vine that rolls off the edge of your paper in a couple of the blank spaces like that. Perfect. Now we're going to do the watercolor. I have two colors of watercolor, liquid watercolor I'm working with today. One is blue and one is yellow. I'm going to start with my yellow because yellow's the lighter color. It's not as strong as the blue. And I'm just going to kind of quickly paint it all over my paper right on top of those oil pastels. And you'll notice they don't cover up the oil pastels. The oil pastels even kind of push the water off a little bit. And that's because the oil and the water don't mix with each other. And I'm painting kind of fast because I want to get back in here with my blue color into the shadowy areas. And I know where the shadow areas are back behind the leaf because that's where the dark green is that I put in there. So if I go in and I'm really careful just along those edges, right, where the dark green is, like this, but then I stop when I get to the yellow finger, kind of starts making it look like there's some shadows back under there. And you might notice that when I'm mixing some of this blue with the yellow, I'm kind of getting what color? Getting a green color. I could even go back over it a little bit with the yellow, kind of like that. And I start adding some more greens and shadows into my pumpkin patch, don't I? Take a little bit of blue, and I might even just dab, dab, dab. And we've done this before in some of our other things where we just dab, dab, dab. We don't want it to be super perfect. Let me take a little bit of yellow. You might want to be careful to rinse your brush before you dip into the yellow again. I have lots of experience, so I'm being careful not to mix my colors in here, but you want to keep your yellow yellow. And if you want any spots just a little darker after they start to dry, you can go back in and just add a little bit of blue in there, a little bit more blue to really make that shadow darker in those little shadow areas. And those will be underneath your leaf, right? That's going to cast a big shadow if the sun was shining on it, but it'll be a big shadow behind anything behind it and on the ground. Kind of like that. There. Now I'm going to put this on the drying rack and switch to the pumpkin. So you get to pick yellow or orange for your color pumpkin. I'm going to pick yellow to give you the first example. If you wanted to draw a tall pumpkin, you would start by drawing a candy corn shape. Okay? So it's a little fatter on the bottom, a little thinner on the top. Then for the next one, you draw a similar shape, but you start it a little further down, still stop at the bottom, but it gets a little thinner. See how this one's thinner than the other one? Because as our pumpkin gets further away from us, it gets a little smaller each time. Okay? And then you might want to put a stem on your pumpkin like that. Now if you wanted to draw a wide pumpkin, it's similar. You start with kind of an oval shape in the middle, and then you make half an oval, and then half an oval. Make another half oval but a little smaller, and another one but a little smaller. And then you could put a stem on this one. Now if we want to do these similar to how our guest artist did, you're going to want to start with big circles, and when we do big circles with these markers, you back your hand up down here. You don't hold them really close, but if you back it up down here, you can lay this big part of the marker real flat on your paper and draw the circle, and then if you get a little smaller and a little smaller and a little smaller, it'll fill it in. So you start with your big circles, and you want to go slow so the ink has time to get down to the tip of the marker, and it might even run off the bottom a little bit. Then for your next ones, you can go up on the point more, a little closer to the bottom of the marker, and we're going to do our medium dots. I know some of you can figure out who our guest artist is just by the fact that we're doing dots, can't you? So we have large, medium, and then if we're really careful and we just use the point of our marker, we can go in and add some really tiny dots just along the edges over here. Just like that. And we're going to fill out these ones in a similar way, but I'm going to speed the film up for that part. Now with my tall pumpkin, I can do the same thing. Because this is a lighter color paper, if I wanted to use an orange marker on top to do the dots, these would show up really well. Would an orange marker show up on the orange paper? Not so much. The black was a much better choice over there. The other color you could have used on this pumpkin maybe would have been a brown that would have shown up. A yellow wouldn't show up very much at all. So I'm going to do the same thing with this pumpkin, just using the orange marker. You notice back here, I ran out of room to do the big ones, so I just did the medium, and now I'm going to put the tinies in between. It wasn't what I was planning on doing, but I had to change my plan to make things fit, so I kept flexible in my thinking and just came up with another idea that still looks really nice and makes it work. Now we have our two pumpkins, so our next step is we're going to add that reflection and shadow. So our reflection is going to be white because that's going to have that bright light shining on it. So if my sun is shining this direction down onto my pumpkin, that means my reflection is going to go just on that side of the pumpkin, right? It's not going to be everywhere. Just going to be on that side. And our oil pastels will go right on top of our colors that we've already done. So if our color was shining or our light was shining this direction on this pumpkin, it would be on just this side. Whoops, I broke it. That's okay. This still works. I'll just set the other piece to the side, pick up this piece, and work on putting my reflection on there. Just like that. Now we need the shadow side. So if the reflection is on this side, we have to go to the opposite side to do the shadow. So for this one, I'm going to use a brown for my shadow. It's going to be right here in between the creases of the pumpkin. So I'm going to go really slow to put that shadow right in there where the pumpkins get bumpy to make them look like they have extra bump. A little bit on that side, just like that, and it would also be on this side of my stem. So I have some shadow and some light. Same thing on this one over here. I can use brown for my shadows. So again, if my sun was shining this direction, my shadows are going to be on that back side or the opposite side of where my shininess is, right? You could also use an orange color instead of a brown to go back in there, maybe, and add a little bit more of that rounded shadow, just like that. But the orange on orange only shows up a little bit. So now we have 2 pumpkins. It's time to cut them. Don't forget our cutting rules. Our scissors only open and close like this, like an alligator mouth. If we have something that's rounded, we make the paper do all the work, and we turn the paper. We also keep cutting way deep in our scissor alligator mouth. We don't want to cut with the tips and snip because we're not doing any tiny little cuts today. If paper gets in your way, just snip it off and let it fall. And you can keep going. I try and cut right on that black line. It'll leave a little bit of black line showing, which is totally okay for this project. I'm going my bump and turn, bump and turn, bump and turn, bump and turn. And that first pumpkin is done. I'll speed up the next one. Now, since we're gluing onto watercolor paper, I can't use a glue stick. It's not going to stick as well. So I'm going to use my tiny bottle of Elmer's glue. I want to pick any dry glue that might have been off the top, off of there first. And then when I twist it, you can see it opens. I know that this is open because there's a little gap in here. When I use glue, I just do dot dot, not a lot, right? Oh, it still has a little stuck on the top. I'll pull that off. And then I'm going to squeeze a really skinny line. I keep the tip of my glue pushed on my pumpkin paper so that it helps spread it around. I only need it on the outside of my pumpkin. You guys are only going to glue down 1 pumpkin. I'm going to glue down 2 since I did a demonstration of 2 of them. And I want to be careful that I'm overlapping them the right way. So this pumpkin's going to be further away. So I'm going to put it towards the top of my paper. And I'm going to gently push down to make sure the glue touches the paper. And then this pumpkin's going to be a little closer, so I put it on top of the other one and put it towards the bottom of the paper, like this. Now, we made shadows last time for our leaves. We should probably go ahead and make some shadows for our pumpkins too. Now, mine are going 2 different directions, right? So I have one light source going this way onto this orange pumpkin. So my shadow has to go on this side of my pumpkin underneath him, and it's going to go off the edge of the page because in real life it would go off and over that way. And I have a little bit of pumpkin here and just a smidge over here. So there's my pumpkin shadow number 1. And then this pumpkin had the light going this direction, so his shadow would go this way, the opposite side of the light for that one, right? And I'm using blue because that was the color we used for our watercolor in the background to cause the shadows. Now you have your beautifully decorated pumpkins in the pumpkin patch with your reflections and shadows to show form.